on the afternoon of September 14th, 1978. Something unfolded inside a McDonald's restaurant in Alexandria, Virginia, that would expose a major Soviet intelligence operation running in the shadow of the nation's capital. The restaurant sat just off U.S. Route 1, a busy commuter corridor linking Washington, D.C. to the sprawling suburbs of Northern Virginia. The location was wedged between a gas station and a strip mall. But what was happening there, hidden in plain sight, was anything but ordinary. The employee was a 23-year-old woman named Patricia Martinez, who had been working at the McDonald's for just over a year. It was during one of her cleaning rounds, sometime around 2:30 in the afternoon, that something caught her attention. A man in his mid-40s, wearing a dark suit and glasses, had been sitting in a booth near the back of the dining area for approximately 20 minutes. He appeared to be alone, eating slowly and occasionally glancing at his watch. Then a second man walked in. He was younger, perhaps in his late 30s, with dark hair and a heavier build. He ordered food at the counter, took his meal to a booth on the opposite side of the dining area, and began eating. The two men never acknowledged each other. They didn't make eye contact, didn't gesture, didn't speak to anyone watching casually. They were simply two strangers having lunch in the same restaurant at the same time. But what happened next suggested something different. The younger man finished his meal, gathered the remains of his food into the brown paper McDonald's bag it had come in, and stood up. He walked toward the exit, and as he passed a trash bin near the door, he placed the bag carefully on top of the receptacle. Not inside it, but on the flat surface above, and walked out without looking back. A few seconds later, the older man stood up from his booth, walked directly to the trash bin, picked up the bag, and left the restaurant. Patricia paused, rag in hand, trying to make sense of what she had just seen. By the end of her shift, the incident had faded into the background noise of the day. But 3 weeks later, it happened again. On October 5th, 1978, the same two men appeared at the McDonald's, and the sequence unfolded in exactly the same way. This time, Patricia was certain it wasn't a coincidence. Timing was too precise, the movements too deliberate. She mentioned it to her brother that evening, a man named Michael Martinez, who worked as a security guard at a federal office building in Arlington. His reaction was dismissive, even mocking. A suggestion was made half-jokingly that perhaps Patricia had caught spies operating out of a McDonald's, which seemed absurd enough that the conversation moved on. Still, Patricia couldn't shake the feeling that what she had witnessed was intentional. On October 26th, the opportunity to observe more carefully presented itself. Patricia had enlisted the help of a coworker, a woman named Lisa Harmon. The two women positioned themselves where they could see both the older man and the entrance, and they waited. When the younger man finished his meal, he reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out something small, too small and too quick for Patricia or Lisa to identify clearly, and placed it inside the bag before folding it closed. He walked to the trash bin, placed the bag on top, and left. Seconds later, the older man retrieved it and walked out. Patricia and Lisa looked at each other. The fact that the younger man had added something to the bag, something he had brought with him and kept in his jacket pocket, elevated the situation from merely odd to genuinely suspicious. Over the next 2 weeks, they developed a plan. The next time the exchange occurred, Patricia would grab the bag before the older man could retrieve it. On November 9th, 1978, the plan was executed. When the younger man placed the bag on top of the trash bin and walked out, Patricia waited exactly 3 seconds, then grabbed the bag, shoved it down into the trash receptacle, pulled the full garbage bag out, tied it off, and began walking toward the back of the restaurant. A voice came from behind her, calm but insistent. Patricia turned and saw the older man standing there. Kay informed her that he believed she had just thrown away his food. Patricia kept her tone light and apologetic, explaining that it was already in the trash now and that she could offer him a refund. The older man asked if she could simply open the bag. Patricia repeated that health code regulations prevented her from pulling it back out. There was a pause, and then he shook his head and walked out, his pace slightly quicker than before. In the storage area, Patricia and Lisa opened the garbage bag. What Patricia pulled out were 2 small photographs, each no larger than a few inches across. The images showed what appeared to be pages of typed documents, columns of data, technical diagrams, stamps, and markings visible in the corners that suggested official classification. These were images of classified materials, the kind of information that should not exist outside of a secure facility. Patricia made the call to the FBI field office in Alexandria later that afternoon. On November 10th, Patricia and Lisa arrived at the FBI field office and met with 2 agents. The photographs were logged into evidence and forwarded to FBI laboratory analysts. The confirmation came back the next week. The documents were genuine and appeared to originate from within the Department of Defense, specifically from materials related to satellite reconnaissance systems. By November 15, 1978, a task force had been assembled, led by Special Agent Richard Kellerman, a veteran counterintelligence officer with more than 15 years of experience. His assessment was straightforward. What Patricia had witnessed was a classic dead drop, a method of transferring information between an intelligence asset and a handler without requiring face-to-face contact. The bag had been intercepted, and now there was an opportunity to dismantle the operation. The surveillance operation began on November 16th. For the first week, nothing happened. The second week passed the same way. On December 7th, 1978, the younger man walked into the McDonald's just after 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but something was different this time. The younger man looked nervous, glancing around the dining area more frequently, his movements quick and tense. The older man never arrived. FBI agents followed the younger man as he left, tracking him to an apartment complex off Seminary Road. Background checks revealed that the vehicle was registered to David Allen Becker, a 38-year-old technical analyst employed by a defense contractor called Systems Analysis Corporation, which held classified contracts with the Department of Defense. Becker had security clearance that gave him access to sensitive materials related to satellite reconnaissance systems. The younger man appeared at the McDonald's one more time on December 21st, and once again he arrived alone, looked around nervously, and then left. The older man never returned. Kellerman made the decision to move forward with an arrest. On the morning of December 23rd, 1978, FBI agents executed a federal arrest warrant on David Becker's apartment at dawn. Inside a closet, hidden beneath a stack of blankets, was a 35mm camera and several rolls of undeveloped film. In the desk drawer, agents found handwritten notes containing technical specifications. In the kitchen, taped inside a cabinet, was an envelope containing nearly $8,000 in cash. After consulting with the public defender, Becker agreed to cooperate. He admitted that he had been photographing classified materials for about 2.5 years, beginning in the spring of 1976. He explained that he had been recruited by a man he knew only as Victor, who had approached him at a bar in the DuPont Circle neighborhood sometime in late March or early April of 1976. Victor had struck up a conversation, bought Becker a drink, and over several weeks had developed what seemed like a genuine friendship. Eventually, Victor had made the pitch, offering to pay Becker for copies of certain documents. Becker, who was struggling with debt and medical bills from his wife's recent surgery, had accepted. The amounts started at $500 per exchange and eventually grew to several thousand. The dead drop at the McDonald's had been Victor's design, implemented in late summer or early fall of 1976. The system was simple. Becker would photograph documents, develop the film using equipment Victor had supplied, and place the photographs inside his McDonald's bag during lunch. The system had functioned without incident for just over 2 years through dozens of exchanges until November 9th, when Patricia Martinez had grabbed the bag. When pressed for details about Victor, Becker's information proved frustratingly vague. He described a man in his mid-40s, approximately 6 feet tall, with brown hair graying at the temples and a slight accent that Becker believed was Eastern European. But beyond that physical description, Becker claimed to know almost nothing useful. No last name, no address, no phone number. The FBI cross-referenced Becker's description with their database of known Soviet intelligence operatives and generated a list of approximately 40 possible matches, but none could be definitively linked to the man Becker described. Kellerman's assessment was that Victor was likely operating under deep cover using an alias. On January 9th, 1979, with Becker's cooperation, a piece of red tape was placed on a designated mailbox, signaling to Victor that Becker had materials ready to pass. FBI agents prepared false documents and set up surveillance at the McDonald's. Becker arrived, placed the bag on top of the trash bin, and left. The bag sat there for 20 minutes, but Victor never showed up. Surveillance continued for 3 more weeks, but Victor never appeared. The FBI's investigation continued for several more years, but no significant leads ever materialized. David Allen Becker was charged with multiple counts of espionage. In March of 1979, he pleaded guilty to unauthorized disclosure of classified information to a foreign power. On April 12, 1979, Becker appeared before a federal judge for sentencing. The judge sentenced David Becker to 18 years in federal prison, noting that his actions had put American national security at risk. Becker would ultimately serve 11.5 years before being released on parole in November of 1990. The McDonald's operation, the dead drop that had functioned smoothly for over 2 years, was over, and it ended not because of sophisticated counterintelligence work, or break through surveillance technology, but because an observant employee noticed that a man kept leaving his trash on top of the bin and decided that it was worth a second look.